A few weeks ago, we started a series called What's in a Name? What's in a Name? And in this series, we are exploring some of the many names of our God revealed to us in Scripture. You see, God is so multifaceted that it takes multiple names to help us understand and describe His character and His nature. So today we're going to look at one of His compound names, and this name is Jehovah Nissi, the Lord my banner. Jehovah Nissi, the Lord my banner. You might be saying, Pastor, why in the world would we call God our banner? Why would we call Him a banner? Well, I think it's a fair question. In our day, it probably does seem a little odd for us to use the word banner to describe our God. Banners are not a huge part of our lives, though we do see them in some places in our culture. We see them in parades, and we see them at protest. People will hold up banners and they'll try to rally people around their cause or draw attention to their team or their organization. This fall when we have Autumn Glory, how many people just love Autumn Glory? It's a highlight of your year. Some of us are Autumn Glory-ites. We are just into Autumn Glory. And this year we'll see many organizations, they'll decorate their floats, and all of those floats will have a banner. And their banner is saying, this is who we are. This is what we do. This is why we exist. This is our cause. We use banners to communicate. Well, in Bible days, a banner communicated some very significant things, but not just in a time of celebration. In Bible days, a banner would communicate some very significant things in a time of battle. A time of battle. An army would go out to war, and they would take a tall pole, and they would fasten their flag or their banner to it. They would hold it high up in the air, and as long as their troops could see that banner was still flying, they would not quit fighting. They would press on no matter how tough the battle was. That banner was a rally cry to press on to victory. And that's the type of thinking we need to keep in mind as we approach our Bible text this morning in Exodus chapter 17. So when I say banner, don't think Girl Scouts in a parade. Think army in battle. Okay, it's a different mindset altogether. Let's go to the Word of God. Exodus chapter 17. Exodus 17 and verse 8 is where we will begin. It says, "Now Amalek came and fought with Israel in Rephidim." Amalek, this is a group of people, not just a single guy, but it's represented by this name. They are represented by this name. The Amalekites came and fought with Israel in Rephidim. Let me give you just a little bit of the backstory here so we all are on the same page. Here in the book of Exodus, God has called the nation of Israel out of slavery. He's taking them on a journey to a place called the Promised Land, a good land, a land flowing with milk and honey. The journey, though, has not been uneventful. They've had many challenges along the way. At first, they had to deal with a reluctant Pharaoh who did not want to let them go. They were pursued by his army, but God parted the seas, and they escaped, and Pharaoh's army was overthrown there in the sea. From there, they journeyed into the desert, but they got to a place where there was no water. God had to miraculously supply them water from a rock. And then they went from having no water to having no food. They cried out to God again and again. God comes through for them, and He literally rains down food from heaven called manna. He supplies their needs there in the desert. So God had provided for these people, but the journey has been tough. And in fact, some of them were asking, hey Moses, is God with us or not? Like, this journey has been so difficult. I'm not really sure. Are we in the will of God or not? Because this is hard. Moses, did God really call us out of slavery? Because this has been rough, Moses. But can I tell you this morning that sometimes you can be smack dab in the middle of the will of God, and the journey can still be really hard. So sometimes you can be in the right place at the right time, exactly where God has called you to be, and it still be a very difficult place. I see Christians, I see followers of Christ that they hit tough times and immediately begin to question whether God had really called them to a place or a task, a mission or a job. But friends, just because it's God's will does not mean it will always be easy. God is often working through some of our hardest seasons of life. And if you don't believe me, just have a baby. Then have a 2-year-old. Then have a 20-year-old. Come on, somebody help me in this house. God is often working through some of our hardest seasons of life, but that is also where we can see some of His greatest faithfulness. If it wasn't for those valley experiences, if it wasn't for those hardships, if it wasn't for those tests, we would not have the testimonies that you and I have collected over the years. So finally, Israel gets to this place called Rephidim, which is literally this place. The word literally means relax. It's a nation of weary people, and they get to this place which means relax, and they're hoping for a little rest. And just as they start to relax, this enemy named Amalek begins to attack them. Now, the Amalekites were descendants of Esau, and they were known to be violent people. They like to fight just for the sake of fighting. You know, like some of our family members at Thanksgiving. These people, they just enjoyed attacking one another. And anytime they would see somebody weak or somebody struggling or someone frail, they would go and they would attack them. And so they see the people of Israel who have been worn out from this journey, and they said, this is an opportune time. We're going to get in there and we're going to attack them. Look at verse 9. So Moses, how's he going to respond to this attack? He says to Joshua, choose us some men and go out and fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. Moses says, Joshua, you go fight this battle and I'll hold up a stick. I don't know. I'm just thinking about the assignments given here, and it feels a little funny to me. Do you think Joshua ever looked at him and said, Moses, how about you go to battle and I'll hold the stick? Moses, I'm a really good stick holder. Moses, you should read my resume. I've been holding sticks for a long time, since I was a kid. I mean, it's one thing to hold a stick. It's another thing to go into hand-to-hand combat. And Moses, he's 80 years old at this point. So, I mean, if anyone gets the whole stick, I guess he gets to. But he looks at this younger Joshua. He said, Joshua, get you some men together. Me, I'm going to go up on the mountain of God, and I'm going to hold a stick. Just an interesting strategy for battle. Remember this, too, that the nation of Israel, they've been in slavery for 400 years. They're not warriors. They're not trained. For 400 years, they've been controlled. They weren't allowed to defend themselves, and now they have to fight this brutal enemy. Moses says, Joshua, get some guys together, get ready to fight. I'll take the rod of God up on the mountain. Now, what's the deal with this strategy? Well, let's remember that the stick that Moses has in his hand is not just any stick. This stick represents the miracle-working power of Yahweh God. This is the stick that Moses had in his hand when the Red Sea was parted. This is the stick that he used to strike that rock and the water flowed out of it when they had no water. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a magic stick. In fact, there was no power in the stick itself. But God would often give something tangible to represent His power. And in this case, it's this stick that Moses calls the rod of God. So Moses says, Josh, here's how we're going to handle this enemy. You gather some men to fight, and I'm going to the mountain of God to pray. Now, you see, in reality, both Joshua and Moses, they're both fighting. One is fighting a physical battle. The other is fighting spiritually. Before we get too far into the message this morning, I just want to say this. In order to truly grasp the name of God, Jehovah Nissi, you and I have to grasp the truth that we are fighting spiritual battles. We are. We're fighting spiritual battles. All the craziness that you see going on in our world today, these things are a result of a spiritual battle. Over the past few weeks, this movie called Sound of Freedom has been a huge success. And if you haven't got to see it yet, I believe it's still playing at Garrett 8. And we have a generous family in our church who've donated some tickets. We have them. We've got a few there at the welcome counter. So if you haven't got to see it yet, stop by after service and grab a gift card and you can go see this movie. But this movie, if you're not familiar with it, it's about the buying and selling of other human beings, including children. You know that's happening. Y'all, that's not just fueled by perversion. That's fueled by perverted people being influenced by the demonic. That's pure evil and proof that we are in a spiritual battle. If you can buy and sell a child to use for your own sexual perversion, that is evil. It's evil. There's no other word for it. You can't describe it. You can't educate that out of someone. You can't medicate that out of someone. You got to cast that out of someone. That is demonic. There's spiritual warfare all around us. You may not like it. You may feel uncomfortable right now. Geez, I wish we'd have went down there to that other church because they don't talk about this sort of stuff. You might think if you ignore the devil, he'll just go away. But I want to tell you this morning, if you're going to walk in victory, you're going to have to come to terms with spiritual warfare. But you can also live in the reality that Jehovah Nissi, the Lord your banner, is fighting for you. That's true too. So Moses looks at the enemy, he looks at Joshua, he says, Joshua, you go fight with the sword. I'm going to battle in prayer. Now the text says that Moses goes on the mountain, most likely two reasons. One, he just wants to be separated. He's not totally alone. We'll see in a minute. But he just wants to be separated unto God. Number two, we're going to see what he does. He wants to be visible to the people. So he goes to the mountain so that they can see him while they're in this time of battle. Look at verse 10. So Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses and Aaron and Hur went to the top of the hill. Moses and Aaron and Hur went to the top of the hill. In verse 11, and so it was when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. Now, this is just really interesting to me. And do we have our drama team? We have our drama team. We don't have our drama team. Note to self, next time you plan for a drama team, talk to the drama team before you plan for the drama team. But I'm telling you, we're good in this church, so I think we can just put one together. Norm, would you come? Steve, would you come? The brother right behind Steve, I don't have my glasses on, so I can't see you, but just come. All right, there you go. All right, so let's act this out here a little bit. Who would like to be Moses? Steve would love to be Moses. All right, now just hold on here. You, Steve, I want you, when I call for the stick, you're gonna hand it to Moses. All right, so Moses, we should probably do the oldest guy be Moses. Okay, all right, we're good. We got the right guy. All right, you lift your hands. You lift your hand, both hands, please, both hands. All right, so let me see this. It says, verse 10, so Joshua said to Moses, he fought with the man, and they went to the top of the hill. All right, so we got the guys. How you doing? You doing good? Okay, all right. Have you ever weighed your arms? No, okay, you're about to. Verse 11, and so it was when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. When he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. All right, so when Moses is lifting his hands, Israel's winning, but when he lowers his hands, the enemy starts winning. Now, the Bible says he's had the rod of God in his hand, so would you hand him the stick, please? All right, so I need you to lift that up, and how about we just lift it up, or we put it in both hands, just like that. All right, okay, all right, that's going to help you a little bit there. All right, so now, when Moses is lifting his hand, Israel's winning, but when he lowers his hands, he starts to lower his hands, the Amalekites start winning. Okay, so at this point, it appears that Moses' stick is more powerful than Joshua's sword. Okay, that's what it appears, because every time he lifts his hands, go ahead, lift your hands, Israel's winning. I mean, they're just taking guys out left and right. But every time he starts to get tired, remember, he's 80 years old. Every time he gets tired, hold on right there. And then the Amalekites start to win. So this is really important. So watch what happens here, verse 12. But Moses' hands became heavy. So they took a stone and put it under him. We don't have a stone, but we have a chair. Put the chair under him. All right? Sit down. Isn't our drama team good? I mean, these guys are like a well-oiled machine. These guys are so good. It says they took a stone and put it under him. He sat on it, and Aaron and Hur. All right, I need you to be Aaron. Yeah, you get on this side of him. I need you to be Hur. Now, Hur is actually a him. I know it's a weird time we're living in, but don't get confused, all right? So you are his brother. You are his brother-in-law, okay? Aaron and Hur. Now, it says here in the text, it says, and Aaron and Hur supported his hands. You supporting his hands? All right, you supported his hands, one on either side and the other on the other side, and his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. Now, I love the picture we see here, okay? These two guys see an older man of God, powerful, but he's getting tired, he's getting weary, he's getting weak, and they come alongside him and support him in this spiritual warfare. You know what they do not do? They don't criticize him. They don't criticize him. When they see him getting tired, they don't criticize him. They don't look at him and go, hey, Hur, just really him, Hur, I think he's getting too old for this job. Look at his arms getting shaky and getting weary. You know, I don't know if he should still be leading us anymore. Hey, bro, I don't know if he's the guy for the job anymore. You know what? Bless God, if I was in charge, I'll tell you how I'd do it. Can I just say that one of the ugliest parts of our human nature is that when we see someone struggling, it's easy for us to become a critic. And I think in the age of social media and Yelp reviews and Google reviews that there's something that, I don't know, we start to feel like it's our duty to express our opinion about everyone and everything. And I just think this world would be such a better place if when we saw someone's arms start to quake and shake and quiver, we ran over there, put one arm under theirs, put the other arm on the other side, and we help them instead of criticizing them. The Church of Jesus should be known as a place that helps one another when we struggle. Galatians 6 and verse 2 says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. Aaron and Hur help support Moses. They keep him in this posture of worship and prayer, and I want you to look at the results. All right, guys, you're all done. Thank you for your help. We appreciate you. Watch this now, verse 13. So Joshua defeated Amalek and the people with the edge of the sword. Then the Lord said to Moses, watch what God says to Moses. He says, Moses, write this down. Write this down for a memorial in the book and recount it in the hearing of Joshua, that I will utterly blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And verse 15, and Moses built an altar and called its name, the Lord is my banner. For he said, because the Lord has sworn, the Lord will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. God says to Moses, Moses, the lesson I've just taught you, it's so important. I want you to write it down. I want you to rehearse it. I want you to go over it again and again and again, and go over it out loud so that Joshua can hear you, because there are going to be more battles, and I want my people to know who I am when they come under attack. Church, this is really the point of us learning the names of God. Each of his names is going to help us understand who he is. Today, you and I aren't fighting the Amalekites, but we do fight battles. We can't be surprised when they come our way. Battles are simply built into this life. Some of us get shocked when tough times come. But why do we expect a life of ease? Where does that expectation come from? I don't know about you, but I just expect my life to be easy. That's dumb. Right? I mean, I just expect to wake up and everything to go good that day. How many else have that expectation? Some of you are like, no, Pastor, I'm Eeyore. I never expect anything to go good. Oh, we love you. But I just wake up and I just expect people to like me. I just expect circumstances to go my way. I just expect things to go well. But you know what? That's really, really stupid, because Jesus himself said, in this world you will have tribulation. But he also says this, but be of good cheer, for I have overcome the world. Right? Listen, battles are just going to come. It's part of life. But I want to talk a little bit about what we might call spiritual warfare, because that's what Moses is doing. It's spiritual warfare. Why did he lift his hands to fight a battle? Makes no sense in the natural. Makes no sense as a military tactic. Why would he just stand there and lift his hand with that stick? How many, let's do a little poll here. How many grew up, I'm going to turn my fan on. How many grew up in a hand-raising church? Some of you are like, I don't know. Is he going to say it's good or bad? If you grew up in a hand-raising church, go ahead, just raise your hand. You've been doing it all your life. What's the big deal? How many did not grow up in a hand-raising church? Look at you. You're all hand-raisers now in church. I remember my first exposure to hand-raisers. I do. We went to this little storefront church. They were opening up, having their first service. They asked me to run the soundboard. And so Patty and I, we were in, we were 20, 21, something like that. And we went to this church. And I had, in the church I went to as a kid, we only had a few hand raisers and both kind of weird. And so I was not used to hand raisers. And so I remember when I went to this hand raising church, I thought, hey, that's weird. There's no way I'm going to do it. And I did not give in quickly. You'd be proud of me. I didn't give in quickly. I went to that church for months. And even then, it was a slow progression. As I began to grow in my faith and know who Jesus is better and better, and I began to love him. I couldn't help it. If you meet Jesus, you will fall in love with him. Amen. And I began to love him. And he always loved me. And he was revealing his love to me. And as he was revealing his love to me, I found that I wanted to express my love to him. But that full hand raise, that just seemed extreme to me. And so I started down low with half hand. Some of you do that now. We watch you up here. We put you in categories. I don't know if you know that or not. We put you in categories. And so, oh yeah, that guy over there. Yeah, Bill over there. He's a down low half hand, right? And then as you start to get a little more free and a little more free, you go halfway half hand. Okay, it's just not wholeheartedly. It's just there. And then as you get, you grow, you get a little more free and you don't care about what your husband thinks, your wife thinks, or the person beside you think. You just start to, you probably get up here to chin height, full hand, fingers extended. And it took me a while to get to two hands. Full surrender. It took me a long time. But why was that so hard? If you're at a football game and everyone's doing the wave, you probably don't watch all those other people do the wave and go, what? You know what, y'all? It's going to take me a while. I'll be back in 5-6 months and do the wave with you. You don't do that. I mean, unless you're a real stick in the mud, wave comes by, you're going to do the wave. First game, you're going to do the wave. If you're a Steeler fan, you got a terrible towel, you're going to wave the towel. No one's got to talk you into it. They don't have to say, come on, get your towels out. Here we go. Here you go. Praise the quarterback. They don't have to work you into it. Just you got the towel, you're gonna wave. It's not a big deal at a football game, but in spiritual matters, sometimes small things feel really big. Have you noticed that? In spiritual matters, sometimes small things feel really big. Think about tithing for a moment. Tithing is a spiritual act of worship and discipline in which some Christians, not a lot actually, a small amount, but some Christians give 1/10 of their income to the work of God. That's a dime on every dollar. Now, normally a dime is no big deal to us. We often throw them in a jar. We throw them in a dish. We've got an old change holder in our car. A dime does not mean a whole lot to us outside the church. But if you were to suggest that someone give a dime on every dollar to the work of God, they'll you know what? All that church wants is my money. How dare you? Don't you know I've got bills and kids and dogs? Hold on, sis. When you were at Arrowhead the other day, that cashier gave you back a dime and you threw it in the give a penny, take a penny thing. It ain't even a penny. It didn't mean anything to you at Arrowhead, but all of a sudden at church, that dime is your greatest possession. I figured it would get, I wrote in here, it will get really quiet at this moment. Don't worry, we already had offering today. All right, we're not passing buckets. It's fine. I don't want your dime unless God's telling you to give your dime. But my point is, spiritually speaking, sometimes even the smallest of things can seem huge to us. Reading the Bible for 10 minutes a day, we'd be like, that's just impossible. I'm too busy, Pastor. You don't understand my lifestyle. But yeah, we could spend hours listening to the news, playing video games, watching the Food Network. Come on, somebody. Right? I mean, how many episodes of diners, drive-ins, and dives can you knock down a night? Me, I'm about a 5 guy. Just turn that baby on and just dream you're right there in the Mustang with him, or whatever it is he drives. Camaro. See? You know the show. What's the scripture of the day, big boy? Yeah, you don't know that, do you? But you know how to make a triple bacon cheeseburger? Deep fried! Some of us would never dream about talking to someone about our faith. That seems so difficult. But yet we could talk to a complete stranger for an hour about Camaros or our favorite sports team. Why is it that small things seem so hard in a spiritual context? Well, here's a couple of reasons. Number one, our flesh often fights us to obey God. It is resistant. It is stubborn. Anyone else in the house of God have some stubborn flesh like I do? I am stubborn. I will dig in my heels and say no. Number two, the enemy often fights us to obey God because he knows there is such power in the simple act of surrender. I'll say that again. The enemy fights us to obey God because he knows there is such power in the simple act of surrender. And one of the things the Bible tells us to do over and over and over again is simply to lift our hands. It's actually amazing. As I was looking at this passage of Moses today, and I'm thinking, where else in the Bible, what other context does it tell you to lift your hands? The only context is worship and prayer. That's the only context. Look here, Psalm 134, verse 2. Lift up your hands in the sanctuary and bless the Lord. Now that verse right there blows my mind. I could take these dirty old hands, lift them up to God in the sanctuary, and in the process, I will bless him. After all he's done for me, all it takes for me to return a blessing to my God is to lift the hands he gave me. He says, and bless the Lord, verse 3, the Lord who made heaven and earth bless you from Zion. He says, you bless God, God is going to bless you. Nehemiah 8 and verse 6, Ezra blessed the Lord, the great God. Then all the people answered, amen, amen. While doing what? While lifting their hands. And they bowed their heads and worshiped the Lord with their faces to the ground. Psalm 141 and verse 2, let my prayer be set before you as incense, the lifting of my hands as the evening sacrifice. Now remember, the culture and the day and time that they're living in order to have right relationship with God, they're out there slaughtering bulls. They're out there slaughtering animals for a blood sacrifice. And here the psalmist says, let the lifting of my hands be an evening sacrifice. It's almost like God is saying, keep your bull, I'll take the hands. Just look at someone and say, keep your bull. No, you weren't supposed to say that. But thank you for being very obedient. He's saying, if you would just take the hands I crafted in your mother's womb and lift them to me, I'll receive that like a sacrifice. Amazing. Psalm 28, verse 1 and 2. To you I will cry, O Lord, my rock. Do not be silent to me, lest if you're silent to me, I become like those who go down to the pit. Hear the voice of my supplications when I cry to you, when I lift up my hands toward your holy sanctuary. Psalm 63, verse 1. Oh God, you are my God. Early will I seek you. My soul thirsts for you. My flesh longs for you in a dry and thirsty land where there is no water. So I have looked for you in the sanctuary to see your power and your glory, because your loving kindness is better than life, Lord. My lips are going to praise you. Thus I will bless you while I live. I will lift up my hands to your name. My soul shall be satisfied, as with marrow and fatness in my mouth shall praise you with joyful lips. Church, every time we lift our hands to God, we're saying, Lord, I surrender this battle to you. Father, I'm just going to worship, and I'm going to let you fight for me. Every time we lift our hands to God, we are declaring that we are on Team Jesus, that we serve a king and a kingdom that is not of this world. Every time we lift our hands to God, it reminds us of Jehovah Nissi. The Lord is our banner, and he is fighting our battles for us. Do you know what I've seen in over, 26, 27 years of ministry now? I have seen huge spiritual breakthroughs happen in people's lives when they seemingly just started seemingly doing small things. Moses lifting a stick to fight a war, that seems small, but not when it's an act of worship. Giving the work of God a dime, that seems small, but not when it's an act of worship. Having a simple conversation about Jesus with a friend seems small, but not when the Holy Spirit has directed you to do it. Amen. He's Jehovah Nissi. He's the Lord, our banner. He flies over our lives. His banner over me is love. He's the God who fights our battles for us. But you know what he asks for us? Just obedience. That's all. And when he says, hey, do this, do it. When he prompts us, when there's that still small voice that says, I want you to bless that person, I want you to send that text, I want you to pray that prayer, I want you to lift those hands. He's just asking us to just be obedient to him. Why are we learning the names of God? Why is this so important? We've looked at two names. A couple of weeks ago, we looked at Yahweh. Yahweh means he's the eternally now God. He's the God of every generation. Here's why that's important. Because I can look at the craziness of this world and I can begin to worry and fret. I've actually heard people say things like this, that, this world right now is such a crazy place. I've heard young couples say, I'm not sure that we want to have kids and bring them into this world. But listen, our Yahweh, our God, is the God of every generation. So the God of the Bible is not just the God of Moses or Abraham or Isaac or Jacob. He's not just my grandfather's God. He's not just my God or my wife's God. He's the God of my sons. He's the God of David and Matthew and Caleb. He's the God of my daughters, Victoria and Olivia and Mariah. He's the God of my grandkids. He's Emma's God, and he's D4's God, and he's the God of Daniel and Jonathan and Jackson. If God could work back in the day, how dare we begin to think that God cannot take care of our kids and our grandkids? He is Yahweh, ever present, every generation God. That God can be trusted. And since I've studied that name, I've got faith and I've got boldness to believe big things for my kids and my grandkids and your kids and your grandkids too. Jehovah Nissi. You're going to face battles, church. Sometimes the enemy will come against you. Sometimes people will come against you. They'll accuse you. They'll say bad things about you. But you have a God by the name of Jehovah Nissi. Therefore, when you pray, you aren't asking God to be something or do something outside of his character. No, the God who fights your battles, that's just who he is. Therefore, you can have boldness and you can have confidence. It's perfectly right and good for you to say, Lord, you can see that I'm in a battle down here and you've never lost one yet. So, Father, I'm not going to try and defend myself. I'm just going to stand here with my arms lifted high and I'm going to let Jehovah Nissi fly his banner over me. Will you stand with us today? just want to talk to someone who might be in a battle. Not everything we experience in life is a battle, but some things are. If you're here today and there's a war going on around you, there's a war going on within, there's some things outside of your control, you don't know what to do about it, you don't know how to handle it, let's take the next couple of minutes and let's offer up that situation to our good God, Jehovah Nissi, the Lord our banner. Will you close your eyes? Just focus on Him for a minute. Father, I want to pray for our church today. I want to pray maybe for someone watching online or listening. And they're like Israel was. They're wore out. They're tired. And they're looking for a place to rest. They're looking for a place to relax and just catch their breath. But here comes the enemy again. Here comes another battle. Here comes another situation. Here comes another accusation, God. Here comes another challenge that they don't have an answer for. God, we thank you as you reveal your name, you're revealing your character and your nature. You are that God who flies over us today, who goes before us, who does such a better job of fighting for us than we do for ourselves. So God, we're just going to let you be God. And we're just going to lift our hands and worship you.